today's show, Gamescom F1 2010 and California Simracers meet face-to-face. This show is sponsored by Raceway. Welcome to Inside Sim Racing. I'm Jessica Lopez.
I'm Tom Hackey.
This is episode 80, and we have a ton of coverage for you today. We got some additional Gamescom footage covering F1 2010.
We have our top sim car challenge.
Of course we do, and we're going to start things off with a recap from this past weekend where we were at Toyota Speedway in Irwindale.
That's right. Mr. Don Keatley, in cooperation with LA Racing School, put together a little event for us to all come down and try out the Blue Tiger motion simulators. And it was great. It was a great little competition.
Yep, it was a friendly little competition amongst sim racers all throughout Southern California and Central California. There was actually 16 people involved in the competition at their chance to win a 20-lap adventure around Irwindale Speedway.
Yeah, in a super late model. Pretty cool. Really high horsepower car. Very cool prize.
$400 value.
Yep.
And you were involved in the race.
I was. Yes, I was.
And you actually put together a little recap.
I did.
Regarding the race. So let's check out Tommy's recap.
We started with a single elimination tournament of 16 people in 2 Blue Tiger motion rigs. iRacing was the sim of choice with rotating cars and tracks and fixed setups chosen by Don Keatley. The beginning combo was the Advanced Legends cars at the Toyota Speedway at Irwindale inner third mile course. First up was Chad Peterson and Zanoa Wilson, followed by Sean Cole and Nick Johnston, myself and Peter Muraves, Jerry Buza and Aaron Cobb, Michael Muraves and Howard McMillan, Ted Severns and Will Taylor, John Kuslan and Darren Ganji, and Dan Cobb versus Scott Kennedy. After the first elimination, these 8 advanced: Scott, Ted, Aaron, Nick, Darren, Howard, myself, and Chad. The next challenge was to be the Skip Barber F2000 at Lime Rock with a setup obtained from Gregor Hutu himself. Though we're all familiar with that combination, the addition of a full motion rig would prove to be very difficult to master quickly. That round saw almost everyone spinning at least once in the underpowered but fun Skippy. Into the semifinals, myself, Darren, Nick, and Scott would emerge, and out of a hat, the trucks at South Boston was chosen. Not being accustomed to high-powered trucks at such a small track, I quickly crashed out, advancing Darren to the finals. Nick and Scott, on the other hand, had a close race that came down to the very end, with Nick eventually on top and advancing as well. The final challenge was once again chosen out of a hat and was again the trucks at Richmond International Raceway. With Darren and Nick competing for the big prize of a 20-lap racing experience from LA Racing School, the action started quickly. Trading places several times, Darren eventually got below Nick and spun him around. Nick pitted and Darren followed suit, not wanting to win that way, and they both performed a manual restart from the pits. After a few laps of trying to chase Nick down, Darren crashed out and Nick drove away for the win.
Nice, good job, Nick. Yeah.
All right, congratulations to Nick Johnston, who has won the grand prize of 20 laps here at Toyota Speedway in Irwindale. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
How do you feel about winning?
I feel awesome. I think this is an awesome opportunity to go out there and turn some laps in a real race car around Irwindale Speedway. I've ran here before, but in a super late model, it's going to be a lot more powerful than I'm used to, but hopefully I'll be able to train on these Blue Tiger simulators a little bit beforehand and get a good handle of it.
Can you tell everyone out there a little bit about your sim racing experience?
I started back when I was 12 in NASCAR Racing 2002 season, then moved up to NASCAR 2003. From there, I ran that for a few years, then moved on to R Factor, and then I was invited to one of the first betas of iRacing, and ever since then, that's all I've drove. It's been easily the best simulator I've driven out there.
And how old are you now?
I'm 20 years old.
All right, so 20 years old. Do you plan on taking your sim racing experience to another level?
I already have been. I've been racing karts since I was 8 years old, so that's what, 12 years now. I've been able to use my sim racing experience to help me out there. And then I've also been able to grow into racing the S2 car out here with Position 1 Motorsports. And that's helped me so much in all my braking points and all my throttle points for Irwindale Speedway. It's been a huge help.
Wow, so 12 years. What turned you on to racing at such a young age of 8 years old?
Oh, well, my dad always been watching racing. He'd been involved being a pit crew member for Baja racing teams. And we'd always been racing, and at the age of 7.5, he gave me a choice between junior dragsters, motocross, and go-karts. And me, I was always kind of the shy, timid kid, didn't want to get hurt, and I didn't want to just drive in a straight line, so my obvious choice was kart racing. Then I started there, ran mainly club races at Willow Springs International Raceway for 2-3 years. Then I moved up into the junior ranks, where I won my first national championship in 2003 at Moran Raceway. And from there, I've been winning national championships left and right. I think I have up to 8 or 9 now. It's kind of start to lose count after a little while there. But karting's definitely taken me a long way. It's got me a career. I work over at Position 1 Motorsports as a crew member. I have a full-time job, so I love the sport to death and hope to stay in it forever.
All right, so Tommy, you made it fairly close to the end.
Pretty close, pretty close. Not too
How
bad.
did you feel about racing? Were you nervous?
So nervous. I've never done sim racing. First of all, I've never done a motion sim, so that was a completely new experience. And I've never done sim racing in front of people. And hiding behind your computer screen is a great little thing. When they're all standing in the room, completely silent and watching you, it gets a little
I could
harder.
tell you were a little nervous by the fact that when I walked in, he was racing. I didn't know he was already there. And you didn't say hi for a while, so I could tell you were not in your normal element.
Man, sorry.
No, but I can relate, so I understand. And you even went up against Darren.
I did.
What was that like?
It was hard. First, it was hard because I know that Darren's faster than I am. So I knew going in, I was like, oh man, I either have to get lucky here or I gotta beat him, and I don't know. But yeah, he beat me.
Well, it was all in good fun.
Oh yeah.
So you got to try the Blue Tiger Motion Simulator,
Yes.
which we've seen around for quite some time now, but have yet to try.
Yeah.
How do you feel that affected your driving?
It was completely different than racing a static rig. Completely different. The whole competition was how quickly can you adapt to this motion simulator all of a sudden. I don't think it made me faster necessarily, at least not while I was trying it there, but I'm, again, not used to it. So, but very cool. I mean, very awesome, replicates G-forces. You know, if you're turning left, it throws you right. It's great. It's awesome.
And congratulations to Nick Johnston, who won the grand prize of the 20 laps at Toyota Speedway.
And we'd also like to congratulate Zanoa Wilson, who got the Hard Luck Prize. He's a road racer who got stuck in an oval race early on and got taken out early. But they got him a 10-lap experience, and so congratulations to him as well.
Yep, we had a grand old time, and thank you to Mr. Don Keatley for having us out and for also getting us tickets to attend that night's race.
Yes, we all went down and experienced a short track race. It was my first short track and your first race, right?
My first race overall. I had such a great time, and Sean actually gave me a little tutorial and history about racing and taught me things like what kitty litter is and tech inspection. So I learned a lot, and I had a really good time.
Yeah, fantastic.
So thank you to Mr. Keatley for getting us those tickets.
Thank you.
And this is going to lead us into our Top Sim Car segment.
That's right. See if you can beat us at racing on a Top Sim track with a Top Sim car.
All right, Top Sim Cars, sponsored by RaceSimCentral.com.
Home of the one-click install.
On today's Top Sim Cars and Tracks, we will feature a new twist once again. Darren and I went back and forth on the right selections for this episode, and in the end we wanted to test people on a different type of discipline. This time, we go off-roading with an extreme rally course from China. This is Rally China 1.0, the Nordschleife of off-road world. It is actually a fantasy track made by Race King and Gringo-san, and it is a great demonstration of what can be created from scratch instead of recreating the existing. You can one-click install this track at rFactor Central, and when you do, you will notice it comes in several configurations. We are running the gravel and normal direction, and it comes in at 15.6 kilometers, or 9.7 miles long. Breathtaking cliff edges, narrow passages, deep gravel, and huge bumps are things that you will have to contend with from start to finish at Rally China. The gravel is deep and thick, making steering very difficult. Overbraking will cause you to plow your way forward without any steering at all. At times you are driving literally up a dried out riverbed with sandy washouts left and right of the driving line. The switchbacks climbing and descending the mountain are made for those who like to steer with throttle, snaking your way through the canyons. Those without those skills will find themselves eating guardrails and rocks, struggling to turn fast enough. Gigantic bumps and off-camber corners will make this track hard. Now multiply that by nearly 8-minute laps, and you will understand the challenge. I'm not going to say that every inch of this track is perfect, but considering its length and overall quality, it is a pleasure to drive. The car this week is entirely up to you. If you feel you can manage a BMW race car around the circuit, then go for it. As long as the car came from the top sim car list and it was available at R Factor Central. Ah, you say the Formula Armorilli is the car, then I say, good luck. You say the Bathurst Legends is the car, I say bring it on. Now for some worthy selections, how about the W-Core trucks? They're gigantic, monster horsepowered, and come in 2- and 4-wheeled varieties. How about the Bora buggies? Much more nimble, much less horsepower. Or perhaps the East-West mod, featuring very high horsepowered buggies capable of blistering pace, but perhaps too much for some. Again, with a distance of nearly 10 miles, just being able to survive a lap will be difficult enough regardless of car selection. This could be a case of the tortoise versus the hare. What makes Top Sim Cars and Tracks so special is that it encourages you and us to try out new cars, to look at tracks that we might not have ever driven. So go to R Factor Central and one-click install the track and your car to beat our lap times. Then go to InsideSimRacing.tv and click on the Wanted banner. Post your times and get in the competition. A last couple bits of advice. Watch out for the poles, they sure are deadly. And the first lap isn't timed, so be sure to take enough fuel.
GamePod, the ultimate race rig for those serious about sim racing. Puts you in the driver's seat with all the controls at your fingertips. Be number one on the road, in the race, in the game. GamePod, the choice of champions.
Hi, I'm Paul Gill, Senior Producer on Formula 1 2010.
I'm Stephen Hood, Chief Game Designer on Formula 1 2010.
And you're watching Inside Sim Racing.
And now it's time for our top story, sponsored by Race Sim Central.
Home of sim racing news and forums since the year 2000.
That's right.
And this time we have Gamescom coverage continuing with Codemasters F1 2010.
Very exciting. I'm excited about this title.
Yeah.
It'll be out in a few weeks, and we've got our good friend Andreas Nie covering all the fun stuff for us. So here he is.
Ja, und wir möchten euch einmal erste Bilder aus dem Spiel zeigen, unser Trailer. Bitte schön.
Welcome, Codemasters Studios, Senior Producer Paul Gill and Chief Game Designer Stephen Hood.
So Darren talked with you guys about your fabulous looking F1 2010 race, and still we had some questions, and I would go through those with you guys. One that particular was of interest for our viewers was the physics behind that, and how they compare to the real deal actually.
Yeah, we spent a lot of effort on our car physics. I mean, that was literally been, you know, it's the one thing that you have to get right is the car handling. So we spent a lot of effort on that. Obviously, we're building on existing tech, the tech used in previously seen in Dirt 2. But there's been 18 months of work on that in terms of moving it forward, in terms of speaking to the teams, getting their data, and then working with F1 drivers to interpret that data. So it was all for us about moving towards a much more authentic sort of simulation model. Exactly sort of characteristics and behaviours of a real F1 car. Really trying to get the model where you can be consistent with your lap times, so you can drive around and you're only literally, you're talking tenths of seconds instead of gaining on someone massively by 7 seconds one lap and then falling away. You've got to have that consistency within the driver model before you can then begin to look at racecraft, racing against AI. So a massive amount of work. We've got 10 simulator seats here at Gamescom, and even that's not the latest physics code. Just this week we've put in another massive update to suspension physics. You're going to start to benefit from the cars going over the bumps and the curbs much easier. You're going to see the wheels locking up under braking, and just the car just a little bit more pointy and better handling in general, really. So massively ongoing as we get towards the final game.
All right, cool. So one of the questions that our viewers had was, so is the simulation, is that predefined, or is it actually calculated while the game is progressing?
It's all calculated on the fly. Too many things happen in a racing game anyway to kind of pre-calculate those things. We don't really fudge anything or cheat in any real way. For example, when the car starts sliding, none of that's pre-calculated. It's all on the fly. So even as the car's drifting across the track surface, maybe it goes through a pool of water, its tyres go over the rumble strip or go across the grass, all the time it's picking up different grip values on the circuit. So the attitude of the car changes throughout its spin, for example. There's an awful lot of physics work that goes on under the hood being calculated by the machine. I think that's the only real way to do it. We do put a lot of effort into our graphics, and the games do look stunning, but that's because we've built on technology that already exists, is very proven. But at the same time, as Paul's mentioned, a lot of the physics has been rewritten specifically to handle Formula One cars now, and it benefits massively from that, especially with the suspension update. I mean, so pleased that ended up going into the game. It's almost like Formula One 2010.5. It's a big step forward for us. So, but beyond that, we're going to keep going with it. It never stops.
Yeah, I mean, players are going to be able to see what Steve was talking about in the game itself anyway, because all of the cars handle slightly different, where the data and the numbers and the wheelbase lengths and stuff are slightly different. So you'll get that feeling as soon as you play the game, and players will most definitely have different preferences in terms of how their driving style applies to which particular model of car.
Yeah, speaking of the cars being different, one question that we had was regarding the steering wheels, and if they're going to be modeled according to what we see in a real race.
Yeah, basically we had two options when it came to steering wheels. One was to recreate exactly what the teams had, but have no interaction with it. And the second one was to try and have a more of a generic footprint for a steering wheel, and then basically take that generic footprint and theme it as close as possible to the real thing. You're literally just talking maybe a button or two difference. But then when the players race around on the racetrack, they can adjust their wing angles, they can adjust their engine temperatures, they can request a pit stop. And when they're pressing the buttons on their wheels and controllers, the hands on the wheel in the game are going to come off, and they're going to see the drivers dialing with the wheels and stuff. And obviously we spoke to all the teams about it, made sure that they were happy with it, but we think that adds so much more when you see your driver making a tweak and an adjustment, then it really adds something to the game.
Yeah, I'll just add to that and say it's one of my favourite things in the game. It sounds so small, but it does add a lot. I mean, when you're watching it on TV, for example, if you're watching Michael Schumacher racing around, then you can always see him mucking around with the brake balance in the car. Be doing the same kind of things, and you see it working in the replays, for example, or when you're driving around. If you're in those particular views where you can see the hands interacting with the wheel, it actually makes it feel a little bit more realistic. It's quite fun to be tweaking those things as you're going down the straight. Much as I shouldn't be admitting to it, but it's cool.
Yeah, so speaking of adjustability, one question was regarding the field of view. Can that be adjusted?
No, I don't think so. We've worked hard with Ant in terms of adjusting the fields of view and making sure they're right. We're quite happy with them in terms of where they are. One thing that I think is a bit of a misconception that's out there is that these cars are so fast, everything's coming at you at like 1,000,000 miles an hour. And when we were talking with Anthony, that actually really isn't the case. When they're going down Monza, the fastest track on the Formula 1 race calendar, he's like, yeah, you've got time to take your drink bottle, look at your pit board, maybe you spotted something in the crowd, and it really is a much more relaxed experience than perhaps you've seen previously in games. So we've left him up to up a bit, down a bit slower, and I think we're there or thereabouts with it. He still thinks it's a little fast on the street tracks, like in Monaco in particular, but we're fairly happy with where they are. So we don't think that we'll leave that open to player customization for this one.
All right. Speaking of other drivers, I understand we have a full grid of all the drivers that are currently racing this season. Now, the AI that is implemented, for example, if we take a renowned German driver, Michael Schumacher, he was a he is a world champion. Now he is struggling a little bit in the season. How would he do in a season of F1 2010?
That's really interesting, actually. If it was up to me, he'd be winning all the time. But we've got, I think the differences in the performances between the car. I mean, the AI behaviours of Michael Schumacher are still really strong, and they are in the game as well. So his speed and his aggression and levels like that, they're all handled by the AI traits, and they'll be in the game as well. The trouble is that he's not able to extract the most out of the machine. So we've got a balance where we've spent a lot of time focusing on the car simulation, the difference in performances amongst the teams, and then built onto that is the AI system. So first and foremost, all of the racing drivers have brains. They all fan out off the start. There's no fast track down the inside and you've gained 10 places off the grid. They've got a system in there where they can have good days and bad days, so they're not consistent all the time. They're not always going to be placing third or whatever the case may be. They've all got race brains, so they block going into corners, or maybe they break a toe, or they'll slipstream you. And on top of that, we've then built into the real world in terms of, Schumacher's an absolute fantastic starter, so that's in the game. Some drivers are more aggressive, some drivers are better at certain tracks, some drivers are better in the wet. So we've added all those things in as well. So it's a combination of the two, really. All
right, so that actually sounds like you really get to be a part of this whole circus actually and feel right in the middle of it. And that brings me to the next question, because you mentioned that there's interviews and press conferences. What is the mechanic behind that?
Well, one of the things we were very keen to do is replicate some of the things you see on TV now. All the build up to the pre-race stuff. You get to see all the drivers being interviewed, the pundits discussing whether or not Michael Schumacher is going to actually win a race this season, those kind of things. If you're watching this, Michael, I'm really sorry, but he probably won't be winning those races. But you get to comment on him. So, for example, let's say you're driving for Mercedes and he's your teammate, and you're quite obviously going to be the number 2 driving along Michael Schumacher when you start the game. Maybe you're trying to take over team leadership so you can adapt the car to your driving style. You'll be commenting on him in the media. They'll be asking you whether or not, how does it feel to be beaten by Michael Schumacher all the time, or maybe you've just recently out-qualified him. You might want to add a bit of pressure to Michael so that maybe he starts to buckle under that and you can take team leadership. Now, because he's more of an experienced driver, he's got multiple championships to his name, he's going to be really difficult to pressure. If you're driving alongside with somebody like Alguersuari, maybe it might be much easier to become the number 1. So when you're doing these media interviews, you'll have people hanging around in a paddock. They'll be calling you by name. You'll go over to them after qualifying sessions. They'll present you with a number of questions. For example, how did it go in that session? You've been out-qualified by your teammate again. Was your recent race success down to the fact that it was all you and you're an amazing driver and you'll go somewhere else in the future, or is it the team? And you've got the option of basically praising the team, praising your teammate, or it's all down to your own driver skill. Maybe you want to engineer a move somewhere else by saying, oh yeah, I wouldn't mind driving for Ferrari in the future. This current team is just a stopgap before I move on to better things in the future. You've got to be very careful about what you say. It's that political game. So they'll have voice actors. All these questions are verbal. You hear them in the game. You also see a summary that appears on screen, and you get some answers to pick from. You don't reply with a voice, because by that point you've already chosen your answer. You know what it's saying. You don't need to hear it as well. That's what happens in the paddock lane. We also have, instead of podiums, we've got press conferences, which are quite cool. So if you finish in the top 3, you go into that room, you see the scene where you sit down, you've got the drivers either side of you if you've managed to win, and you've got different questions from different interviewers. And they're taken slightly different way as well. They're a bit more professional, and what you say to the media in that kind of scenario really counts, because it's to a worldwide audience at that point. So there's something to do outside the racing as well. It's quite authentic. It's what Formula One's about.
Cool. So that really takes you right in the middle of the whole experience. Excellent. One question regarding the force feedback. How adjustable is that actually with the different wheels that are out there?
Well, it's a question that comes up quite often, I think, especially from the people who have got all the wheels, or they've just bought some kit specifically for Formula One. I get a lot of messages all the time saying, I've just bought such and such wheel. I hope it works with the game. I've got a room full of boxes where we've had steering wheels coming all the time. I think there was one day where about 3 or 4 wheels keep being delivered by people, and it was a case of, right, that one works, take the next one off, put this on. It's not really what we look after in the development teams ourselves. You've got QA departments, they've got every single controller you've ever imagined, and certain wheels, we always say we officially support them, but there's a number of tweakable options in there as well. We've kind of left it open, knowing that some people have their own custom controllers and they want to reconfigure all the buttons, change the force feedback settings for various things, change the dead zone, alter the pedals. There's nothing worse than being stuck with a game where you can't alter all those bits and pieces. So we've left it open for customizable controls as well as making sure it works on our officially supported wheels and things.
All right. Last question is regarding the future plans. I mean, you already announced that there's going to be a sequel to that. Are there any plans already that you can share with us for that game?
Yeah, not in terms of the design. When we came up with the original concept for Formula One, we didn't design a game that was specifically for Formula One 2010. So there's a lot of ideas that are already in the studio, even elements of the game that we've developed quite advanced through the line, but it wasn't going to make it into the final game because you just haven't got the time to get that quality or fix the bugs they might introduce or whatever. So lots of plans there. No doubt there'll be loads of comments on all the forums and stuff. So we've left some development capacity for to get suggestions on areas to improve. But there definitely will be a F1 2011. That will be out at the same time next year. And then there's also an option for F1 2012. At that point, the Concord agreement runs out, so you have to see where we go from there.
Well, from what we saw right now, I mean, if you keep the pace up, I guess we will look forward to the next installments and to a renewal of the contract, I guess. All right. Thank you very much, Paul and Stephen. And that's from Codemasters regarding F1 2010.
So, F1 2010, very exciting, due out in a few short weeks. And speaking of that title, iRacing is going to be releasing the Williams FW31. How do you think those two will compare?
You know, it's going to be very interesting to see. I think iRacing is definitely going to be the hardcore sim, and F1 2010 is definitely going to be the dirt side of things, but I'm looking forward to them both. They're both very exciting to me.
Well, we'll be able to review and test them both out here on the show very shortly. That's going to wrap things up today. Hope you guys enjoyed our coverage. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you have not yet. Visit our website, and Checker Flag is out, and so are we. Racing rigs provided by GamePod, the choice of champions. Go to gamepod.co.uk. Get your background images at wall-graphics.com. 2010 by Codemasters.
So awesome. What am I saying? Sorry.
It's always first real blooper.
Our friend.
Home of online racing. Wait, one more time.
And as you can see behind me, there's a real simulator that is actually used to race and do some really cool stuff. And